The world is out of balance. The wizard's circle in Evermore is broken, and its wizards rage upon the earth with the same raw forces that created her. I, Gabriel, am all that remains to protect the wizard's throne. I dare not leave this place, and yet I do not know why my wizards have forsaken me. They must be stopped before all is destroyed. Master each sphere of magic. Only a human can restore balance to the circle and the world. Arise, your initiation begins.
Thanks for tuning into GameSpot Live. We'll be talking about Age of Wonders 2: The Wizard's Throne, which is a sequel to the 1999 game, Age of Wonders. Age of Wonders 2 is the latest entry into what's basically a new breed of fantasy strategy games for 2002. We've already seen Disciples 2 and Heroes 4, both of which were great games. Age of Wonders 2 is at least as good as those other games. It's definitely worth a try. Basically what Age of Wonders 2 does is it goes back to the original Age of Wonders and it improves on everything in the original game. And it also adds some new stuff. So the first thing you'll notice about Age of Wonders 2 is just how much better it looks. The sequel uses a 32-bit color palette as opposed to the original game's 16-bit color palette. So the colors are a lot richer and they're a lot deeper. Also the game's units are a little more detailed. They've got slightly better animation. But the thing is, they don't really seem to have the kind of character that you might have seen in other games. Some of the units, like knights, just look like knights. Dragons just look like dragons and so forth. That's not to say they look bad, they all look really good. And you can fit a bunch of them on screen at the same time. A lot of Age of Wonders 2's battles, and the later games especially, are really big and you'll see lots and lots of units on screen at the same time. Age of Wonders 2 also sounds pretty good. They improved the soundtrack over the original game. The music is basically the same sort of instrumental, orchestral synth music as in the original game, but it's a lot better. It's of much higher quality. Unfortunately, in the tactical combat, the sound is pretty much the same as it was in the original game. A lot of it is kind of cheesy. Some of the units have really silly sounding voice samples, and the thing is they only have one voice sample per unit. So you'll hear the same sample repeated over and over again, which can sound kind of silly. But otherwise, Age of Wonders 2 looks and sounds really quite good, and it plays even better. Age of Wonders 2 is a lot like a lot of other fantasy strategy games you may have played. You have a kingdom composed of different cities and towns. You use these cities and towns to build up little adventuring parties or little war parties to go out, explore the map, capture resources, conquer your enemies, and so forth. What Age of Wonders 2 does is it expands on a lot of the elements of the original game, and it adds some of the stuff from Master of Magic. For instance, you research spells over several turns, and you can also research different wizard skills, which is a new feature that can help you customize your wizard. It's also got some new features like an improved diplomacy system. Even though diplomacy still doesn't play that big a role in Age of Wonders 2, it's actually a little more useful. For instance, if you have friendly relations with one of your neighbors, you can actually trade resources and spells and things like that. When you're playing Age of Wonders 2, you'll spend about half the time exploring the map and half the time fighting. So when you explore the map, you'll find mines and other resources that you'll want to capture. Or you may get a quest to seek out a party of monsters or other enemies to eliminate. And when you complete those, you'll get rewarded with maybe some resources or a new spell. Basically, there's never a shortage of interesting things to do in the game while you're exploring the maps and building up your cities. Also, the fighting in Age of Wonders 2 has been expanded over the original game. There's just a lot more tactical options that you can use, a lot more magical spells, a lot more abilities. One of the kind of minor problems about tactical combat is the way the random number generator seems to work. That basically results in weak monsters maybe hitting a little more than they should and strong ones not hitting enough. This is compounded by some of the ranged units in the game because Age of Wonders 2 wanted to balance out ranged units like crossbowmen and so on by giving them penalties across different distances and heights and so on. So basically some units have one single shot which will have a very strong negative modifier to hit and will also often miss. So it's kind of frustrating when you've got units like that, but you can usually balance it out with other units, other strategies, other magical spells. Otherwise, tactical combat is still really enjoyable. There's a full complement of siege weapons and magic spells that you can use in and out of combat to make sure you succeed. So basically, Age of Wonders 2 is a sequel that does everything a sequel should do. It goes back to the original game and it improves on just about every single aspect of it. It also adds a lot of new features from other similar games, and it does so pretty successfully. One thing about Age of Wonders 2 is there's a lot to it, so it will seem kind of complex. If you're new to these sorts of games, you're going to want to play through the tutorial mission and maybe browse through the manual, which is nice and thick. But otherwise, Age of Wonders 2 is a great fantasy strategy game, and if you're into that sort of game, you really shouldn't miss it.